Tag TV brings you daily news bulletin from India. Breaking news and views from India.
You're watching South Asia Newsline and here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Friday, the 8th of September. World leaders arrive in Delhi for G20 mega event, India to amplify voice of Global South. Pakistan election can take place even before 2024, says caretaker PM. And Nepal MP demands expulsion of Chinese ambassador over remarks against India. And now for all the details, leaders of powerful economies of the world started arriving in New Delhi as India geared up to host the high-powered G20 summit. The event, which is slated to begin tomorrow, is likely to feature food security, debt problems of vulnerable countries, and climate action as its agenda. India's PM Modi is also scheduled to hold more than 15 bilateral engagements on the sidelines.
World leaders started arriving in Indian capital New Delhi on Friday as India hosts the G20 summit over the weekend. The country's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant said India's presidency has been inclusive, decisive, ambitious and action-oriented. He emphasized the leaders' declaration post the summit will have a strong voice for the Global South, one which was never done in any previous summit. In a statement, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also expressed confidence that the New Delhi summit will chart a new path in the human-centric and inclusive development.
And our focus is, as Sherpa said earlier, to drive a consensus on priorities of the G20, how to structure in the priorities and interests of the Global South into the G20 discussions, and how to bring together the leaders of the G20 and the leaders of the invited guest countries around that particular agenda.
India's presidency of G20 comes at a time when there's a hard stance and a deep divide between the West and the East over the Russia-Ukraine conflict. However, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak termed India's presidency has been a success so far.
G20 has been a huge success for India. India is the right country at the right time to be hosting this, and I feel we're going to have a very good couple of days of deliberations and decisions made.
How do you like the theme?
I think it's a great theme, and actually when you say one family, you know, I'm an example of the incredible living bridge that Prime Minister Modi described between the UK and India.
On the sidelines of the summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have more than 15 bilateral engagements with various leaders. The meetings will give an opportunity to review India's bilateral ties with these nations and further strengthen developmental cooperation, a statement by the Prime Minister's office said.
Moving on, amid widespread speculation that Pakistan's general election could be delayed, the country's caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar on Thursday said that polls could be held before February next year. According to Pakistan's constitution, general elections must be held within 90 days after the dissolution of the National Assembly. In an interview to a local media channel, Kakar said that deciding the election dates is in the hands of the poll body, but still the polls can take place before 2024. Pakistan enters an election year as former Prime Minister Imran Khan is serving jail for multiple cases against him and has been barred from politics for 5 years, which he says is all politically motivated. And Torkham, the main border crossing between Pakistan and Afghanistan, has continued to remain closed, leading to a build-up of trucks laden with goods near the border, affecting the flow of trade in both the countries. The busy border crossing was closed on Wednesday after Pakistani and Afghan Taliban forces started firing at each other. According to authorities, officials from both sides were trying to determine the reason for the clash.
से पैरों में या इधर से पैरों में या ग्रस ग्रुस शुरू हो गया और बस हम लोग इधर गाड़ी के नीचे कर कभी उस तरफ लोग भागते हैं, बस पता नहीं चलता। जंग हो गया, बस अभी तकरीबन 1 घंटा या 1.5 घंटा हो गया, फिर बस किया, झगड़ा ख़त्म हो गया। लेकिन मुसीबत यह है कि हम लोग पैसा मैसा हमारे पास नहीं है।
दुकान همدغه د چولو دکان دی او کورخه او چولې خرڅو او کورونه افغانستان کې د کار هم کوو. پرون په 7 بجې باندې ډزې شولې، بس ډزو کې مو سر ډک په ډکه کېښود دکان کې او دکانونه مو رابند کړل، بس نور لاړو وتښتېدو.
Meanwhile, in a separate incident, 4 Pakistani soldiers were reportedly killed in Chitral near the Afghan border in a clash with militant organization TTP. The group pledges allegiance to the Afghan Taliban but is not directly a part of it. Moving on, locals and activists recently held a protest in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir over heavy taxes and shortage of water, electricity and wheat in the region. A report.
A protest gathering was held recently by locals in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir over a number of issues including soaring inflation, heavy taxes and shortage of water, electricity and wheat. They blamed the Pakistan government assures them of development, but crumbling infrastructure has continued to add to their woes, while they are bearing the brunt of Pakistan's economic crisis. The recent inflated power bills have also shaken the domestic budgets and they are unable to bear the burden.
3100 मेगावाट बिजली पैदा करने वाला जो खिता है जो इस वक्त प्रोड्यूस कर रहा है, उसमें से 400 मेगावाट आपकी ज़रूरत है और अगर आपको 400 मेगावाट नहीं मिल रही, इसका मतलब है कि ये हमारा कसूर बनता है। हम आज अगर आप निकलें तो हम ये समझते हैं कि हम अपने लिए वो फ्री बिजली जो है वो हासिल करके रहेंगे, लेकिन इन्होंने जो ठेकेदार यहाँ पर दिए हुए हैं वो तमाम के तमाम ठेकेदार इनको कमीशन देते हैं और वो सारे का सारा आटा न सिर्फ ब्लैक होता है बल्कि यहाँ पर जो आटा मौजूद है वो भी यहाँ पर अवाम को मुयस्सर नहीं आता।
Locals have long blamed Islamabad for depriving them of their basic rights, claiming the agenda is to keep the illegally occupied region underdeveloped.
Sri Lanka's former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa on Thursday denied allegations of a British documentary that Islamic State-inspired extremists were used to carry out suicide bomb attacks in 2019 to create insecurity in the country and help him win election later that year. Local media quoted Rajapaksa saying he did not have any contact with the intelligence officer named in the documentary from the time he resigned as Defense Secretary in 2015 until he became the President in 2019. Meanwhile, the government has announced that a parliamentary committee will investigate the allegations made in the British television report. 9 suicide bombers belonging to local Islamist extremist group carried out the series of blasts that tore through 3 churches and 3 luxury hotels in Sri Lanka in 2019, resulting in the killing of 279 people. Moving on, a ruling coalition lawmaker on Thursday demanded expulsion of the Chinese ambassador to Nepal, Chen Song, over his undiplomatic remarks against India. The Chinese ambassador, in an address earlier this week, tried to portray India in negative light and had advised Nepal to deal cautiously with India. Asking the foreign minister to seek clarification from the Chinese envoy, Abdul Khan, a former minister of PM Dahal's government, said that the government should declare the ambassador persona non grata. He added the Chinese ambassador should refrain from making statements about Indo-Nepal relations as it falls outside the purview of his diplomatic responsibilities.
नेपाल सार्वभौम सत्ता संपन्न स्वतन्त्र राष्ट्र हो भनेरै संविधानमा लेखिएको छ। यदि हो भने कुनै पनि विदेशी मुलुकको एउटा राजदूतले नेपालको परराष्ट्र नीति निर्धारण गर्ने होइन, नेपालले कोसँग कस्तो सम्बन्ध राख्ने हो नेपाल आफै निर्धारण गर्ने हो। तर एउटा देशको राजदूतले जुन तरिकाले खुलेआम सार्वजनिक रूपमा सनातनदेखि हजारौं वर्षदेखि कायम रहेको नेपाल भारत सम्बन्धको विषयमा विषगमन गर्ने वैमनस्यता लगाउने काम गर्न खोजेको छ, त्यो घोर निन्दनीय छ। यदि नेपाल स्वतन्त्र राष्ट्र हो भने उक्त राजदूतलाई तुरन्त परराष्ट्र मन्त्रालयले स्पष्टीकरण लिनुपर्छ र तत्काल नेपालबाट फिर्ता पठाउनुपर्छ भन्ने म जोरदार रूपमा माग गर्दछु।
A plastic recycling facility in the Skill Development Center of the Indian Army in Baramulla district of India's Jammu and Kashmir is promoting reuse and providing livelihood to youngsters. Run in collaboration with NGO Conserve India and the local municipal council, fashion designing graduates are employed at the center who convert plastic waste into fabric to create high fashion accessories and home decor products. The purpose of the project is to solve the problem of plastic pollution that has plagued the Kashmir Valley.
हम इंडियन आर्मी का शुक्रगुजार है कि उन्होंने प्रोजेक्ट लाया यहाँ पे। इसका एक गोल है, एम है कि हम अपने कश्मीर को साफ़ करें, क्योंकि यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा वेस्ट, पॉलीथीन वेस्ट होता है, जिसकी वजह से बहुत सारी बीमारियाँ फैलती हैं सब कुछ। तो हम वो रिसाइकल करते हैं, रिसाइकल करते हैं। तो हम यहाँ पे फिर शीट्स बनाते, फिर हम उनके बैग्स बनाते हैं, लैपटॉप बैग्स बनाते हैं, हर एक किस्म का बैग बनाते हैं।
Products which are being created under the project will be retailed by the youth group under their own brand called Posh Bags. They are also creating a community-level social impact through specialized workshops on social and environmental issues.
फर्स्टली हमने यहाँ पे जो वेस्टेज होता है, बहुत सारा वेस्टेज होता है यहाँ पे, हम उसी को अपसाइकिल करते, रिसाइकिल करके उसके नए नए बैग्स बनाते हैं। फर्स्टली मैं आपको ये प्रोजेक्ट दिखाना चाहती हूँ। उसमें हमने ये वाला बैग्स बनाया है। देखो, जो ये लैपटॉप बैग है उसका ये स्लीव हमने बनाया है यहाँ पे वेस्टेज का अपसाइकिल करके। और ये वाला बैग भी, इसमें हम इसको हम इजीली कैरी कर सकते हैं और इसमें छोटी छोटी चीज़ भी हम उठा ले सकते हैं।
That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time next week. Have a great weekend. Good night.
Tag TV brings you daily news bulletin from India. Breaking news and views from India.